I think in the public sector, you have a huge opportunity to make change that impacts on society more broadly. The public sector is everybody, whereas the private sector is just the private interest of a particular organization. So there's opportunity for far greater impact long term. And I think this is very empowering. And the opportunity to make a difference is something that I, in fact, think is quite important.
In New South Wales, we have one of the best public services in the world, and it's only when you go overseas and you see what people don't have. You know, in Australia and in New South Wales, you know, we get access to the most incredible services regardless of our income, of our background, of where we live.
In the public sphere, I see good leadership also as being a great collaborator, because the sort of problems that governments face today are so complex. They really don't ever fall neatly to just one area. So I think that the ability to collaborate well is really important for good leadership in the public sphere. And probably just not trying to constantly second guess the politicians, which I just think people lose their way when they do that. You know, it's a bit, I guess in the old days it'd be described as being frank and fearless, but it's about just staying true to trying to, you know, resolve the complex problems that government face without always trying to second guess what the politicians of the day might want.
People look to me to provide leadership in a number of aspects. So being responsible for the legislation and regulatory framework is one level of leadership, and so that obviously is a very government regulatory focus. But not just that, it's looking at leadership in terms of the way that we can implement change, or the way that we can encourage more people to take up surveying as a profession, and the way we can encourage people to talk about what they're doing at work. Engineers and surveyors are traditionally not the most extroverted sort of people. They usually just come to work and do their everyday job, and they don't see the impact that has, or they don't talk about the impact that makes on society. And so then from a leadership aspect, it's very much about leading by example. So it's being out there and talking about those projects or the changes that we've made and how that impacts on society.
Yeah, leadership's an interesting thing to reflect on over my career. When I first started in the public service, and I say this to the people who work with me, when I first started in the public service, I started in the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet, and the head of the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet was a Sir. So he was called a Sir. So we didn't really talk about leadership. We didn't talk about it at all for many, many years, actually, as a deliberative practice, if I can put it like that. So really the first years of my career leadership was more about me watching good leaders, watching not so good leaders, and really learning from that experience, I think. Over the years, it's changed a lot. I think over the years, the recognition comes that you do have a responsibility in the positions of leadership. Without a doubt, the best leadership advice and the best thing that's influenced my evolution as a leader is feedback from people I work with. So when you can get good, honest, constructive feedback, both from the people that who work to you, if I can put it like that, but also your colleagues, also your manager, feedback has been the thing that I've most taken on board and grown from, I think. And now over the years, what is really striking is it's much more of a deliberative practice, as I call it. Like, one thinks about one's leadership role. You work hard at talking about it with your teammates, and also how you can improve. And certainly being exposed to good role models matters a lot.
I was blessed with my first female boss, was probably the youngest senior executive ever appointed. She was appointed to that role in her 20s, so this was many years ago. And there are two characteristics that she portrayed consistently, unwaveringly, and they were a genuine concern and kindness for everyone that she met, but particularly for her staff, and a steely resolve. So you had this wonderful balance of kindness and interest in individuals, but a focus on delivering the outcomes, a focus on working through all of the issues to maintain her focus and deliver the outcome required. So that was a great learning experience for me, and lovely to see that balance between a steely resolve and a genuine kindness.
The fundamental thing for me in leadership is giving people confidence, making it a safe environment for them to bring everything about them to the workplace. So you can be vulnerable. You don't have to be perfect. And to work with a leader who accepts that and is relaxed about that and always thinks about you as a person who is bringing their best. So when you come up with a mad idea or a dumb idea or your work's not perfect, they say, wow, how can we fix this together? It's not a critical environment. So I think that's one of the most important attributes. And for me, it's the women in particular who've given me confidence. So one of my early managers at the Department of Sport and Recreation is a woman called Wendy Gillett. And Wendy was just fantastic because she very early recognised my talents and had promoted me into an acting role where I had responsibility for leadership of people, managing some important cabinet submissions. I really thrived in that environment because of the confidence that she had in me. Another public servant that I got to know at Sydney Olympic Park Authority was Gabrielle Kibble. And Gabrielle Kibble is a very powerful female leader, and we don't have so many of those. But Gabrielle often has done roles for government in recent years which have been difficult and highly political. And it is Gabrielle's intelligence and her use of power and clear logic that enables her to do those roles. And I particularly appreciated looking after Gabrielle Kibble as chair of the audit committee at Sydney Olympic Park Authority. And Gabrielle was always extraordinarily well prepared, always early to committee meetings. And I knew that if I were very well prepared, I could also be early to that committee meeting, and I might get 5 or 10 minutes talking to Gabrielle before a committee meeting where she might otherwise be, I think, rereading the Sydney Morning Herald or the newspaper. And I learnt a lot from Gabrielle in those very those personal interactions, but also in seeing her chair that committee and working elsewhere, using her intellect and her experience to resolve very difficult situations for government.
I think leadership is a really interesting topic for the community today, and I think the way it's described has changed over the years, because you can be a quiet leader. You don't have to be a noisy, bossy leader. I mean, I'm probably a more extrovert sort of personality or an enthusiastic personality, but there can be, I've seen very quiet leaders as well. So I think leadership comes from clarity of thought. It comes from listening to other people, and it comes from inclusion, of saying, you know, come along with us. This is, you know, the leader has to set the vision for an organisation. And I think if you can communicate that vision, I mean, in every study done of leaders around the world in business and the public sector, everybody rates the ability to communicate effectively as the single strength. And I feel that communication was something that came pretty naturally to me, so as a great asset. But you get very busy during the day sometime and bogged down, so you constantly have to remind yourself, why don't you communicate, and then communicate a bit more. And the more you can communicate, I think the more effective you are as a leader. So there are different styles of leadership, but no matter what style you have, you've got to have that ability to communicate and bring people with you. You know, set the ground rules, demonstrate where you want to get to, and then show people how to do that. It's no good just talking about it. I think you've got to show that you can deliver on that and that they can benefit from it too. You know, as I said before, teamwork gets you everywhere. You can never achieve anything alone. You've got to be part of a team. And I think a good leader leverages that team and inspires that team to want to go with them on the journey.
What you need in your leaders is real passion for what you're doing, not just law, but the broader picture of working in the public interest and for the people of New South Wales. It's quite different to a job that's built on a profit motive, I think. So I think values and just being really passionate at what you're doing, because that is why people want to come and work for you. The public sector target of female executives, there's a Premier's priority where the target is 50% women in leadership positions by 2025, but I've already got about 66% females in my leadership group, which I think is fantastic. But then that's made easier for me, admittedly, because I've got a lot of talented females coming to work here, and generally there's a lot of females in general counsel roles in the departments and in government legal jobs. They're coming for the flexibility and I think a greater opportunity.
It's not a solo game, okay? So when I look back on my career, all the amazing achievements weren't just me on my own. It was because of the fantastic team that I had around me. So when you're recruiting staff and looking for people to work on a project with you, always try and find people that are actually better than you in certain things. Try and not have the big ego, but actually look at the strengths that the people bring to the table. The best ideas were never mine. The best ideas were always from the people that were more intimately involved in the processes. The aim is to try and solicit those and get the golden nuggets and ideas. And as a leader, your role is to support and encourage and open the doors and break through the walls to allow them to shine and let their ideas be implemented.
It was really when I really became involved with the building of the Kokoda Track Memorial that really made me grow up overnight. And I'll tell you the story of how it came about. Historically, the hospital became a public hospital in 1993. Veterans at the hospital were told that they could go to their own district hospital. They don't necessarily have to come all the way to Concord anymore. During that time, it was fraught with difficulty because many of the veterans felt disenfranchised because they've always seen Concord as their hospital for all these years, and now it appeared that the hospital has abandoned them. So that was around about 1993 when we integrated into the State Health system, and the administration at the time felt that we needed to do something to actually engage, our veteran community, to say that one, we still do care for them, and two, that we want to do something that we would commemorate their service, pay tribute to them. So the general manager at the time was obviously quite visionary, and he started a number of things, one of which was to actually construct a memorial to pay tribute to our veterans, a World War II memorial in tribute to our veterans, and the other was create the Anzac Research Institute. So there were two key projects. I was the executive officer at the time to the general manager, and hence I was involved with the early sort of concept of the memorial and taking that forward. Unfortunately, the general manager was short-lived. It was at that point that I really had to dig deep, really, personally for me, that journey to actually take that project and run with it. At the time, I had a lot of, sort of a good relationship with the RSL, and Rusty Priest was the president of the RSL at the time, and he, together with me, saw the project forward. So I guess, sort of, if I had to back myself, there was one major project that I thought that I'd never be able to see through. One, because I knew nothing about building a memorial, but you had to bite the bullet and run with it. And you know what? I have learned so much, and I've met so many veterans in that time who have given me advice and have helped to mentor me. And I think that was when I actually grew up overnight.
Southeast Asia, Vietnam, with whom I've had a great deal of experience, Laos and Cambodia, took in antibiotics and medication when Southeast Asia, because of the loss of the Vietnam, the Americans put an embargo on the West sending antibiotics or medicines in. And our hospital here in Sydney, one of our great teaching hospitals, felt that was not fair when innocent children were dying. So some of us took a suitcase full of antibiotics and went in to Cambodia, which literally did save the lives, and that opened up doors too.
And I think it's really important for people to grasp opportunities as they come up. You know, I've been very fortunate. I've acted in lots of positions and tried them out and ended up loving them, and opportunities that I didn't think I would like. And I think one of the important things is listening to people who are around you, because sometimes they know what you need, and they will give you an opportunity that you weren't thinking about. And I think it's being open to listening to that. Gail Kelly talks about backing yourself. She's a wonderful role model, and I really believe that is really important. You need to have confidence in your own ability and your own skills, and really being honest. I think it is always important for us as leaders to be honest about our own abilities and when we make a mistake.
Yeah, I think in terms of leadership, I like to focus on the outcomes. I think the positions that you have are transient. It's not about you per se. And so it's important to have a vision, to drive that vision, to set the compass for the organization, to grow leaders behind you and then walk away. The satisfaction that you get is from the outcomes that you've created. I think that's empowering. What I would say to young girls is have a go. I think not enough women step up to have a go. They're often uncertain. They often need a push. Whereas men will go for a position if they are 70% sure that they'll do the job. Women tend to be 120% sure before they'll go for it. I've found that where I've taken a risk and gone for a position where I've not been 100% sure, I've actually found it's worked out very well, and in fact has been tremendously easy. I've actually said to people, no one told me it was this easy, you know. So I think that we really need to encourage girls to do more. And the networks women have can help women understand their potential, have the confidence to step up, and also to seek advice if they want. It doesn't have to be lonely at the top. You can rely on your friends and your networks.
When I look at my role now and the leadership role that I'm in now, I'm surrounded by some amazing, amazing people with amazing talents. And I find that my role is more like a conductor in the musical. You know, you can't just let the strings go off and not have the percussion in sync. And so I actually find in leadership, it's like being a conductor, making sure everything's working together, everyone's that should be collaborating together is, and that if a particular project requires, you know, certain expertise, that you make sure that that expertise is there at the right time.
I suppose probably the very biggest leadership lesson for me was just actually to be myself and let people, you know, really see the real me. That's probably been the biggest realisation that has made me a better leader, and yeah, it's paid me back over time.
A lot of the time, females aren't very prone to taking big risks, especially when it comes to their careers and going for a new job or a promotion or something like that. So often the recruitment people tell me, and I've seen a little bit of this in those that I mentor, when males look at a role description, if they meet 50 to 75% of it, they'll go, you know what, I'm perfect for that job, I can do it. On the other hand, a female will look at it and go, I can only do 90% of that job. I'm not going to apply for it because I'm not the right person. I'm not 100% fit. And so that's being brave enough to take that challenge, not being scared to be the only female in the room. Often I go to conferences and I am not only often the only person under 35, but I'm often the only female in the room. So it's not letting those challenges stop you from doing what you really want to do. I'm really big on being passionate. We spend way too many hours at work. Most people spend more time at work than they do at home with their family. So if you're not passionate and you're not in love with your job, you really do need to find something that gives you that passion.
A lot of leadership is constructed, I think, in a male way. It's harder for women to think of themselves in traditional leadership positions because I think they're very gender. The construction of them is gender-based. I would, in talking to audiences, boys and girls, because I think boys need to have this spoken to be spoken to about this as well. One of the things you need to talk about is being active, is being involved, is being engaged with things, and I think ethical leadership is very important. So I think that you need to talk about doing the right thing. There's a lot of leadership around and about which is not particularly ethical, and so maybe one of the things that we've done here in the school in the time that I've been here is to put practical ethics into operation. Your children don't come equipped naturally with an ethical sense. It's something they learn.
Yes, well, I can honestly say, and I'm not glossing over it, I've never ever encountered any bias or negativism based on gender. Never. I often wonder whether it was reverse, that they wanted to give women a chance in whatever field it was. Certainly, never for one moment in my life did I dream of entering politics, let alone becoming Governor of New South Wales. You can imagine that would be pathologically grandiose.
To become senior in any organisation often takes a commitment above and beyond just going to work and doing your job. And I guess often it's the passion which actually I think makes and creates leaders and successful people within organisations, and the way in which they manage their interactions with other people and projects and the whole gamut of things that you address in the working day, that delivers a difference between someone who just wants to go there 9 and 5 and someone who actually makes it their life. That is a different attitude. But I think that women in the past were regarded as not really having the ability or the time or the being positioned well enough to be capable of taking that on. And I think there have been plenty of people who've proven that not to be the case. But it does also require some support from boards. There is an underrepresented still at serious board positions, and I am a supporter of affirmative action in those spaces, because it's too easy for an existing board to say, look, we're considering there's a vacant board position. Look, we just want to select on the basis of the best person for the job. Absolutely, I agree. But when they often make that statement, they say, we really only want to select the best person, often the candidates they're looking at are only men. And you have to look actively and carefully there are plenty of talented and capable women, but often they aren't actively sought out because they may be a little bit harder to find. And I think that's important about affirmative action, helping people find those opportunities and giving some of the men in the senior management of organisations in the executive roles opportunities to work with seriously capable women without being under threat.
I think women are underrepresented, not just in the government and public sectors, but in the private sector as well. And we've seen that, for example, through the representation stats on women on boards and the number of women CEOs of the top 100 companies in Australia. We're not setting any records. Internationally, we're lagging in many respects. And Australia's had a bit of catching up to do. I mean, we have catching up to do in the political sphere. We have fewer women in political leadership in Australia today than we had a decade ago.
So yes, I think inspiration has come from many other women. I hope now that I am able in some way to provide inspiration to other people, but particularly women. And the UTS High Achievers mentoring program is one that has definitely humbled me as well. Those people are incredibly talented. Their philanthropic endeavours, their academic endeavours, their sporting or musical talents, They're very well-rounded individuals who excel on a range of fronts, and I think the world is going to be a much better and more vibrant place when that cohort of people with so many talents are in the position that possibly leaders are currently.
The point I reflect upon, which is a real point of optimism, is the young women that I work with today are way more capable, way more confident than I kind of ever was. And I'm so thrilled. It's one of the best things of coming to this stage of your career in a leadership position is working with those young people and young men as well, because of the talent they bring to it. And it's an optimistic point. So I look at the young women today and I think, fantastic.